are. My name is Jennifer Taylor. I'm the Director of Internships and Practica here at Westmont College. And today the internship department is very pleased to bring some graduates to Westmont to talk about their experiences since they graduated. They'll talk about some of the internships and jobs and such that they've enjoyed since graduating. They will be speaking to several groups today. One is the internship elective class. Why don't you put your hand up if you're a part of that group? Even higher, thank you. And we also have a group of communication studies people, the practicum class. So you can put your hands up as well, just so we know who you are. Then we have other people from the Westmont community. And so thank you so much for being here. We welcome all of you. It's great to have you. In my position, it's my pleasure and honor to be involved in that important work of matching up students with internships. It's the people connections that are vitally important when it comes to securing employment or other significant opportunities after graduation. Sometimes after students graduate, we don't know how they are faring. I don't always know, for example, what role an internship or a volunteer service has played in the life of a student. So it's fun for me to find out from alumni, real alumni who've been out for a while. And I want you to take this in the best vein, but I don't really go after superstars. I simply find people who are willing to come and talk to us. And it seems to me that it turns out that these normal, everyday people are, in fact, extraordinary. And I think that's probably the way each one of you is as well. So by bringing these panelists here, you automatically have exposure to valuable people, to connections. And you'll be getting to know these panelists better than they get to know you. So I want you to feel free to follow up afterward if you have further thoughts or questions, not only because they're very interesting and inspirational people, but also because they are interested in you. And they're interested in staying in touch with you, and I'm sure they'll go into that a little bit as well. One of the things that I really like about this event is that I cannot predict how it will go. I don't know what will end up being valuable to you. So I think that the wisdom that you take from this panel and this event is going to vary as much as these three individuals do. What can you expect to take away today? Well, I'm hoping that you can come away with some reassurance, first of all. Maybe some ideas for taking next steps, maybe a little bit of motivation to move in that direction. I hope you take some encouragement. Maybe you even start a plan. Here's the afternoon's format. I'll introduce each panelist briefly. Then I get out of the way while they address specific questions about lifetime experiences and events. We're going to flesh out responses as we go. For example, if you have a burning question, or even if you have just a question after a response, please feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. If you do respond, please speak loudly. And if you wouldn't mind repeating the question, that would be helpful. If you don't get a chance to ask something or it doesn't feel right during the panel discussion, then you'll have a chance to ask afterward. I plan to end at 4:30, so you may feel free to leave at that time. Please turn off the sound of any electronic devices that you have. And one more thing, one of our panelists came down with a virus yesterday and is flat on her back. It's Kristen Mira. I am sorry she can't join us today. Kristen is a fairly recent grad, And one of the reasons I was pleased that she would be sharing with us is that she made such good use of Westmont resources. She used the Office of Internship, she used the Office of Life Planning, and I like to think that that helped her get through a difficult time in the economy and such. So anyway, I'm sorry Kristen's not here, but we'll bring her back another time. So who is on the panel? First, we have Ms. Stephanie Williams from the class of 2010. Unlike her tag says, she is not a microbiology major. Instead, she's a cellular and molecular biology major. Stephanie is the program instructor at the Santa Barbara Zoo, as well as counselor and training coordinator. She's doing some other things that I will let her tell you about, including some instructional assistance for students with disabilities. I know that Stephanie and I had a chance to sit on a panel last year for admitted students, and she was a delightful participant, and so I'm really pleased that she's willing to join us today. I'm going to skip Nate for a minute, go over to Kristen Rushforth Ritzau from the class of '04, was a comm studies major while she was here, and she's the founder, director, and author of A Beautiful Mess, and she'll tell you a little bit about some of her products. And she also works in the student life office at Azusa Pacific, and many other things. I met Kristen on a Europe May term trip in 2001, and she was just a sophomore at Westmont. My husband was co-leading a trip, and my family joined the group. And Kristen stands out to me as someone who was an awful lot of fun, but just a good quality person. And then through Kristen, I had the pleasure of meeting Nate. Nate currently serves as the Educational Resource Specialist in the Christian Commitments Department at World Vision International. I met him through Kristen, I believe. Perhaps. Yeah. Perhaps that was one of the ways. Yes, I was there. I was at their wedding. And all I know is Nate was immediately likable, just really well-grounded person. He and Kristen live outside of Los Angeles, and they call their home their urban homestead. So anyway, yeah, okay, good. All right, so let's get started by asking you, what are the events and experiences that brought you to your current position? What you did well in negotiating that transition, and what you wish you had done differently. And we'll start with our most recent graduate, Stephanie.
All right, well, my primary job is the one at the zoo. It's the one I like the most. And I actually got that job I was looking, because I wanted to stay in Santa Barbara after graduation, and my mom said, well, you got to pay your own way. I was like, okay. And I was looking around, and on the Westmont page, the employment page, they actually had what the zoo was hiring. So I went in and applied for a camp counselor, and they mentioned that there's another position they were hiring for, and all you had to do was write a lesson plan to get this position. So I took the paper. I was like, okay, whatever. And I sat there like, I've never written a lesson plan before. I didn't even know I wanted to teach until the end of my time at Westmont. And I kind of BS'd a lesson plan and got the job. And they ended up keeping me for like a year-round position, because it was supposed to be for the summer. And yeah, that was an interesting transition, because pretty much right after graduation, I had training. And I just stayed in Ocean View until I could find some better housing, because they let alumni stay for a year or summer. And yeah, and then my other position, the really long one, where I'm substitute instructional assistant for students with disabilities, I found through my church, and I was looking for another job because the one at the zoo was only part-time. And it was a great job because I have experience with kids and never worked with kids with disabilities before, but they kind of trained me and then threw me in with the Lions. And I do that every once in a while. And my third position, which is not listed, is a babysitting supervisor at my church. and I am in charge of the teenagers and making sure they don't kill the kids, and which is a good thing, and teaching them how to change diapers and do like basic disciplinary things for kids. So yeah, it was, and the transition for me really didn't happen until the end of summer when everyone was going back to school and I wasn't. And I realized like, I should probably get another job because loans are gonna hit pretty soon. And it was like once I was able to kind of figure out, okay, where am I gonna live, where am I gonna work, it smoothed out. Like I'm still learning things, so I guess I'm still transitioning, you could say.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for just this opportunity to share with you all, and I hope we give a little bit of guidance. I know she wanted us to talk about when from Westmont to where we are currently. That was a little bit longer for Kristen and I than Stephanie. But I just wanted to go back even a tiny bit further towards high school when I realized there was a world. I grew up in Santa Barbara, so some people, yes, it was a harsh upbringing. It was actually Goleta, so anyway, big distinction there. But I had not done very much traveling outside of the immediate area, and I had gone on a few mission trips down to Mexico with my church, and had suddenly realized in a high school youth group that there's a world outside of this gorgeous place with just different challenges and different injustices happening, and so that really stoked my desire to see what other parts of the world had to offer. And so within the span of about 4 years, I had gone from traveling to one country, Mexico, to about 30 or so through various opportunities. And so coming into Westmont, I knew that I loved two things, which was traveling and helping others, serving others. And so I really structured my time, I think, at Westmont, trying to build into what I took in some different off-campus programs and an internship that I'll talk about later as to how I could incorporate traveling and helping others. And so I think we're getting into our majors a little bit later, but I majored in social science, which gave me the opportunity to really explore 4 different disciplines: sociology, political science, econ, and history, which just gave me a broader perspective, I think, for my time at Westmont. And so I did these two off-campus programs, one semester at sea and then one going to Berlin, neither of which are Westmont run, and that wasn't a choice that I made lightly. It was just at that time Westmont wasn't offering exactly what I was wanting to do, and I was really just wanting to explore lots of different regions of the world, and so I went on those 2 trips. And just really throughout those processes just was discovering more and more the gifts that God had given me and the passions that I was all about. And so I just, again, tailored my education towards funneling those things. Then I had a senior year internship, and not through the internship program. I don't think I was even aware at that point that there was an internship course, or that I couldn't add something more onto my already busy load. So, but I interned at Direct Relief International, which is out in Goleta. What do they do? They distribute medical supplies to emergency relief victims and things. And that was a fantastic experience, just seeing how a nonprofit worked. They weren't extremely large at that point. And I really had no intention of getting an internship. My girlfriend at the time, Kristen, had said, "Why don't you see what they're all about?" And I said, "Okay, I guess." So thank you for that. But all these experiences really enabled me later when I was applying for the job, which I'll talk about later. That really just were things to put on the resume as I'm a seasoned world traveler. I care about things in the world and things. So we graduated. I worked for Jane Higa here, VP for Student Life, for a year after that. I was her administrative assistant. I pretty quickly discovered admin work isn't a lifelong career calling for me, but for a year outside of college, I really couldn't have asked for a better job and a better team and better people to work with. And just staying connected with Westmont and all the connections they have here was just incredible. So that was a great opportunity. And then sorry, you're going to have to maybe repeat a little bit of this since you're fairly connected to me. But
It's a little bit.
yeah. Then we got married a year after graduating, if I have that correctly. Got married, went on a honeymoon, moved to Pasadena, where Kristen was going to Fuller, and I was jobless. I mean, it was extremely difficult to find a job living 120 miles away from where you would be living. So I didn't really plan as much as I would have hoped, and that's something I would have done a little bit differently. Just thinking about, oh, right, we're moving, and I don't have anything lined up. I was fortunate enough to have a connection in the Los Angeles County Probation Department where I applied and actually got a job as a probation officer a few weeks after we moved and got settled into Pasadena. And after 3 months of very intensive training and learning, and I was on the job for the actual job working with youth in the detention camps for about one shift of 2 days, and soon discovered this is just not the calling, not the job that I had thought it would be. I went in very idealistic and naive, thinking I could change the system, and I think you have to be a certain type of person to do that work, and that was not me. So again, something I would not have done that differently, because you never know until you try, and you have to get yourself out there and learn. But again, I learned that was just not something I wanted to do. So again, I'm unemployed for about 6 weeks, and on the day that I told my boss at the probation department, this isn't for me, a job opened up at World Vision International, which is where I now work. Coincidence? Maybe. They didn't usually have a lot of job openings, so I took it more as a sign that this is an organization I would eventually work at. I thought it would be a 1 week shift and I'd be right back into a job, but it took about 6 to 8 weeks to actually go through the long, laborious process of obtaining a job with them. But eventually I was successful and started again as an admin assistant, but this time I knew that there was a lot more room for growth and different opportunities that they would provide me. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later as to the nature of my work there. But so I've told you a little bit about the negatives. What I think I would have done differently, one more on that, was I don't think Jennifer was talking about the other Kristen who wasn't here taking advantage of Westmont resources while she was here. I did not do that whatsoever. And I even had an extra year to be here when I was working, and I did not take advantage of Dana and Celia and Office of Life Planning or internship classes, and there were so many great resources that they have that I wished I had taken advantage of. It was only after, and only a few years ago, that I took the StrengthsFinder quest or Strengths Quest. I'm not sure what they're calling it now, but that's a really valuable tool, and I've seen how some of my strengths are really incorporated into what I'm doing at my current job. And so knowing that ahead of time, I think I would have been able to tailor more of my job search towards those strengths. Eventually it worked out for me. I was pretty fortunate, but I would encourage you to take advantage of what is offered here. And then another thing was I just tried to do all of it on my own, and not
Sorry.
not taking advantage of other people, and not using connections and just meeting with people and finding out from other people and other jobs, you know, what's your job like, and just doing these just really easy informational interviews. But for me, being an introvert, it's more difficult to just kind of put myself out there. So I was more thinking that I could do it on my own, and again, it worked out for me in the end, which was fantastic. But for others, I would have encouraged you to just talk with people. People are way more accessible and available than I had thought, and they give just really good guidance for future. So that's my brief story. On to you.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for being here today. I know some of you didn't have a choice to that, but I really appreciate your time and your efforts in making your way to be here. So I will back up a little bit before graduation as well. I came to Westmont as the girl with the plan and really thought that I knew what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and so came in thinking that I was supposed to move from Seattle to Southern California and go to Hollywood and be that Christian Hollywood that's going to transform the industry and blah, 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 blah. So got an internship on my own as well down in between, actually the summer, in between my sophomore and junior year, down in Studio City, California, and would commute from Santa Barbara, from Ocean View, 1 day a week, and would drive down there to file paperwork and just be the intern. It was not glamorous. It was a harsh industry for some people. Like Nate said, it's works for some people, but Hollywood's actually very, very, very small. It's a very small community. You find out everybody's connected to other people. My boss at the time had 3 different jobs. That company ended up falling apart, I found out last year, because the boss that I was working for was embezzling all this money and stuff. So there's also a lot of really sketchy stuff that happened, so I'm glad I didn't remain connected to that company, but I was so grateful for that experience because I learned very quickly that Hollywood was not for me. Came out of that, and the pendulum swung the exact opposite direction, and did my study abroad in the Czech Republic through what do you call it? A broad
American
program
University.
through American University, so not associated through Westmont. Was not another glamorous semester as well, but wanted to save the former Soviet Union from communism, you know, because I can do that. So college was about getting my ego in check, a lot of it, so maybe some of you are on that journey. So went to the Czech Republic, got an internship with Amnesty International, and came quickly to find out that couldn't speak Czech very well. Czech has a whole different alphabet. And the people there were, it was only 10 years after the Czechoslovakia became the Czech Republic and Slovakia. So people were still very depressed, and I went into my first bout with depression, and it was just a really hard time because I'm not a depressed person and could not save the Czech Republic from themselves, and that was not my goal in life. So, and this is definitely the Cliff Notes version of my life, but Amnesty International was a great organization and learned a lot about fundraising, learned a lot about working in a different culture, learning with a different people, learning with a different language, learning what people can do and can't do, the parameters of working within a system, a lot of the things that you guys sit in classrooms and learn about. And getting over there in another country and having an internship was just a whole other learning curve. It was a fabulous opportunity, and learned that that is, again, what I didn't want to do. While I was over there with American University, I saw the benefit of going to a liberal arts university where student life was top notch. I mean, really the investment you guys are getting from your resident directors, from your RAs, from even Spring Sing and stuff like that. Having people invested into your life really meant something to me because I went on this program, and it was that program, it wasn't American University. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but that program really showed me what student life looks like when people are not invested into your life. So while I was there, I started looking at grad schools to work with college students, and that was really, I was an RA my junior year before I went abroad, and loved my time working with the girls in my section. VK, anybody? Yeah. So it was a great year of being an RA and investing into people's lives, and really just getting a chance to work with college students, and I thought, oh my goodness, you can make a career out of this. There are programs available that are college student counseling and development programs. Azusa Pacific, where I work now, has a great one. But I didn't choose that route either. I just like choosing the hard way in life. So I chose to go to Fuller Theological Seminary, and started that 8 weeks after graduation. Simultaneously, 4 days after graduation, started a job at United Way of Santa Barbara County. So graduated on Saturday, and I think I gave myself 1 day off, and then jumped into a full-time job on that Tuesday. And it was just back to back, go, 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 go. That was my life. I was defined by trying to do something, trying to make something of myself. So it was a huge whirlwind of just, we got engaged. I didn't want to be a ring by spring girl, but I got engaged Christmas because I found the guy that I wanted to spend my life with. And so we postponed, I mean, we didn't
We
have a wedding
waited.
date. We waited, which was a huge decision just in terms of vocation and life. We got engaged Christmas of our senior year, but we knew we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. So it was like, okay, we don't need to, it's okay, we love each other. We're going to be stuck with each other for a while. So we waited 1.5 years and got married the following June, which for us was a huge, wise decision. And I got to spend a year living on the Mesa with my girlfriends. I got to work at United Way and started grad school at the Fuller Extension here in Santa Barbara. So crammed a lot in, but it's, again, a year that I look back on and cherish with great memories because it definitely was something that I will never get that time back. Fuller decided to beef up my classes and finish sooner to get a job. So we got married and then moved into married student housing down at Fuller. Got an internship again, because in grad school you have to get another internship. So got an internship working for a local church in Los Angeles and worked for them for a year. And that was a great experience of working for a church and learning that churches aren't perfect. If you find a perfect church, don't join it, you'll mess it up, as the saying goes. So I began this whole interview process, getting online, searching, trying to find a job, working with colleges, and came to find out that because I didn't go to the college with the grad school, and I went to the grad school without the college, I wasn't very well connected, and I wanted to go into an industry of higher education where I just all of a sudden set myself up to not go to the right conferences, to not be connected to the right people, and entered into this job search where I was not prepared, and ended up applying, I think, to probably close to 30 jobs, trying to just get an interview. But and I thought my resume was strong, I thought I was a good candidate, but was wildly competitive. Ended up finally getting an interview for a part-time position at Azusa Pacific University. I know, don't hate me, but I had school too. So APU was a great choice for me. The job required that I have a master's degree, which if you want to go into higher ed these days, most jobs require you to have a master's degree. So I did have that. So I jumped on board they have a community service requirement of 120 pretty much hours that you need to do to graduate, to walk a graduation. So I work in that office that supervises that requirement. And I started out as an educational program coordinator and research coordinator, working part-time. So again, no benefits, not a huge salary, just trying to get my foot in the door. And simultaneously was still connected with my church, even though my internship had ended. I'd graduated from Fuller in 2006. So at that point, we loved our church, and we jumped into doing volunteer work at our church, started working with women there, and started leading women's life groups and recovery groups. My master's thesis was on spiritual formation with women who have been in kind of abused situations and using spiritual formation as a healing tool. So I used that in my church work. I didn't even think of that as a vocational calling. Started leading these women's groups, and we started talking about things that we hadn't talked about in church before, just really going deep with them in terms of spiritual formation exercises, and simultaneously started building this ministry that's now kind of blossomed into this whole thing that I didn't even know what would happen. But that started in 2006, and we spent 3 years together. The groups ended up growing and still are, and blossomed into retreats, and started writing stuff down and wanted to tell my story. And so, I mean, this is really the Cliff Notes version, but 2006 to 2010, finally started working with somebody at APU who came in just to help people write their first books. And I'm a communication studies major, business minor, never thought English was even, my mom to this day makes fun of me because I'm a terrible speller, thank God for spell check. Never thought of writing as any part of my future at all. jumped on, started doing a blog, and people started reading it and really liking it. And I'm just not that kind of person. I would rather help people. I'd rather be the RA kind of behind the scenes, planning events. Started speaking at different engagements, really finding connections with women, of talking about some really deep-seated issues with perfectionism. And I don't use that word lightly. It really was my addiction. I thought, you could see my life plan. I wasn't, well, here's my things of helping people in this. The pendulum just kept swinging of, this is my life plan, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do it. And kept falling on my face tragically, and the world's over, oh dear God. Oh, my poor family. But
Sometimes.
yeah, then, all that. So started leading this women's ministry and really started plugging in. And the publishing industry is its own panel in and of itself right now. In 2006, the publishing world really collapsed. And so trying to get a book proposal, do all this stuff. Luckily, my job was part-time, so it worked out. I worked 29 hours at APU and had Mondays off and half days on Thursdays. So I could pour my other energy into this ministry. And the funny thing about being at that time a 26, 27-year-old and trying to put yourself out there on this platform, it was really hard. And to get rejections from people and say, no, you're not going to do this, or just a no. And I got some really nice, my mom would joke with me, and she goes, you need to scrapbook that rejection letter. It was so nice. And, thanks, Mom. But finally, just trying for 3 years to pitch myself, to go out, to build this platform. And I told Greg Spencer earlier today, I said, I ended up accidentally being a writer, and really I'm a spokesperson for liberal arts education, because I didn't start out thinking that I was going to be a writer, but I had all of the tools that I needed in order to be a writer, because I finally had something I needed that I was supposed to say. And that's what it was about, is I finally had a foundation and something to say so I could write about it. And a lot of people started, I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer. And I coach them, I look at them, well, what do you want to say? Well, I don't know, but I need to be a writer. So how do you get published? Like, I don't know, because what do you want to say? So you can see how that kind of goes. And if you've read Anne Lamont's Bird by Bird, you definitely know that it's a whole journey, a whole process. So yeah, this is my book. So 2010 was finally released, and it's a whole birthing process in and of itself. So we're not like raking in the dough. We're not wealthy. We were joking on the way up here. We haven't made it. We haven't arrived anywhere. We're just kind of living our life, and we've kind of ended up on the other side of it. At least the first part of our career, feel like we've kind of been that far at least of, okay, well, we've gotten somewhere a little bit, and we feel like we have 2 feet to stand on, which is good. And in a tough economy right now, that's a lot. So.
Great, and that is a good way to go into this next question, which is to ask you about the nature of the work that you're doing today. You brought us up to the present, and tell us about what you do. What do you see as the positives in your work, and the negatives? How does it fit into your life?
Guess I'll start. Start off with the zoo job. The nature of my job as a program instructor is to connect people with the animals. And I've always loved animals when I was a kid, and kind of wanted to be a vet until I realized I was kind of scared of animals. Then I got over that really quickly. But I work mostly with kids and like getting down to their level and teaching them like, yeah, this is a huge animal, because I work on a giraffe deck. So if you ever see pictures of people feeding the giraffes at the zoo, I'm the person who's there with you to make sure you don't get knocked or killed. And like pretty much just watching as this kid who is like terrified of this animal, because I mean, they're 15 feet tall, and you're looking at this big head and this long tongue, and they're just like, I don't want to touch that. And like coaxing them into like saying, yeah, they're cool, like their tongues are 18 inches, and making it exciting. And when they finally actually do feed the animal, and they're like, I did it. You're like, yeah, you did. And that is like probably the like best part of working at the zoo, is when we get to see that real connection with these animals. I mean, they're pretty cool, besides cleaning up their poop and stuff. But yeah, and so like we also do zoo camp, where we're teaching kids about the animals and having them walk around the zoo, and I have my kids waddle like ducks because I can. And like that's probably like that's the job where I learned how to educate, how to take this big concept and break it down for a 2-year-old to understand. And sometimes you gotta do that with adults too. And that's like the nature of that job. And then the job, the counselor and training coordinator, those are the teenagers that volunteer for zoo camp. And I am the person that makes sure they're with the right age group, that they're wearing their uniform. I'm kind of like the mother hen. Just make sure everything goes well. I have to call them if they don't show up for their shifts, that sort of thing. And it'll be an interesting summer because it doesn't really start up to the summer, so that's fun. My third job, because I have many, the substitute instructional assistant, that one I would say is probably my hardest job. And that one is you're in the classroom with children who have anything from ADHD to nonverbal autism, and you're helping them integrate with the regular class. Sometimes you have to pull them out of the class, you have to deal with tantrums, and then that is the one where I'm like helping these kids at least like learn something. Like I had one kid, he could say 10, and I was like, that is amazing. I worked with this kid for 2 weeks, and he could finally say 10. So I was like, great. And like seeing how the teachers respond to these kids and teaching the other kids that, yeah, they're a little bit different, but they're still cool. You can still play with them and helping them have friends. And that's what I say, it's probably my draining, and that's probably not what I'll end up doing for the rest of my life. And then the third job as babysitting supervisor is also working with teenagers and helping them like figure out, okay, now how do you do a timeout when the kid isn't doing what you're saying, or when the kid tries to run out the room because they're going after their mother, or even things like changing a diaper and giving a baby a bottle, which are things I learned because I grew up in a 24-hour daycare. And I'm like, oh, wait, not everyone grew up with kids all around them all the time? Okay, so this kind of works. What's the other part?
Positives in your current work
Negatives.
and negatives.
Negatives. Well, I kind of mentioned the positives in all of them. I would say probably the negatives at the zoo is the fact that I would love for it to be a full-time and it's not. And like knowing that I'm like, okay, I can only be here for so long. And like not knowing kind of what's happening, like if like my shift will be cut because if it rains, we don't go to work because giraffes will not come up to the deck if it's raining because they don't really like mud. And we have some very picky giraffes. And like that is kind of like the negatives of having part-time is that my shift might get canceled, or if I'm subbing, I might not get called in to sub that day. And so I have to go, okay, what is my budget going to look like? Because I'm not going to get the income I was expecting. And probably also for the babysitting supervising is sometimes you have to hold a kid that's crying all night long because they want their mother. And that one is probably the worst one because you're trying to deal with all the other kids and you have a crying baby on you. And you have teenagers who don't know what they're doing. So, yeah.
That's, I mean, not many people get to say they get to work with giraffes, so that's pretty awesome.
It's a pretty cool job.
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
I have babies.
And I can only keep one job straight, so managing 4, you must be doing something
That's
right. So.
kind of what I did at Westmont, so it's not a big transition for me. If some of you guys knew me, I was leader of REJ. I was admissions intern. I was also an biology TA and somehow kept a social life and was a cellular and molecular biology major. So me having 4 jobs, none of my friends are surprised.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I just want to clarify first what World Vision International is and what World Vision that most of you probably recognize the name World Vision as. The organization I work, they're both the same, but they're both different. World Vision International is kind of a guiding body. They set strategy. We have 100 offices around the world, so work in about 100 countries, 40,000 staff, and each country is its own office. World Vision International is kind of the coordinated body of all
Just
this.
made it look like the puppet master.
Yes, well, it's kind of like an octopus, just kind of its tentacles. The World Vision that you might be familiar with are the sponsor a child for $1 a day. Your church might purchase a well or a goat. And sorry, I can't track those goats for you if you want to know if that got to your child during the gift catalog. But they're very interconnected, so those are kind of the differences, if in case any of you were wondering. But the nature of my work as an educational resource specialist, I am responsible for developing leadership curricula for about 300 staff in my department around the world. I work in the Christian Commitments department, and our goal is to just reinforce our Christian identity and our commitments and our witness in, again, the 100 offices that we work. So it's helping to ensure that what we say when we say we are Christian is just understood at the global level, and how that works out in so many different contexts where you can say some things, but you can't say everything. So it's always challenging, which is one of the positives, I think, of the work. My brain is constantly being stretched to think about how different audiences would think through this particular thing that we say. In addition to developing the training materials for our staff, I help mobilize prayer throughout our organization to just informing our staff of how to just be strategically praying by just producing various resources that they can pray through, and then helping to make accessible the resources that our department does produce in the 100 countries. So doing some web design and website creation and things of that nature. So that's kind of the nature of the work that I do day to day. I've been blessed that they've been sending me to 3 to 4 countries a year the last 3 years, to places like the Philippines, South Africa, Kenya, going to Israel in May, London a couple of times. And it's just, I never thought I'd be at this point so quickly in my career of just working there for 5 years, starting as an admin assistant, and then just being open to new opportunities and always trying to just learn new skills and taking initiative and introducing new projects. So they've apparently seen something in me where they want me to go places for them, which is just, that's what I've wanted to do when I said I was growing up, and now I'm doing it. So that is one of the positives in my current work. Just I love the mission of what we do, and I actually haven't explained exactly what World Vision is all about. We're a Christian relief, development, and advocacy organization committed to serving the poor and the oppressed throughout the world, just helping them to overcome poverty in different ways, walking alongside them and building relationships with them, and helping them not just giving them a handout, but also just helping them with life skills and education and health, and to just kind of pull themselves out of poverty once we leave their community, because we have an approach where we don't want to be with them for a lifetime, because that's not sustainable. We want to be with them for about 15 years and then move on to another place where they will continue their growth and development. So that's the mission of our organization, which I just love to be a part of. It's very fulfilling to go to work each day knowing that in some small way I'm contributing to that aspect. I love just the diversity of traditions and perspectives that I work with on a daily basis at my office in Monrovia. There's maybe 15 different nationalities out of 200 people, and that's just always neat to have that kind of diversity. But then also just writing emails and having Skype phone calls in all sorts of different time zones throughout each day is just, to me, that's invigorating and encouraging to just hear from our staff around the world and what they're up to. And I mentioned the traveling, which is another perk. And there's always new things to learn and new opportunities, and I think that's, for me, again, that's just helped stoke my passion of just, if I'm bored, that's kind of my own fault, because there's always new things that can be done. And finally, just the last positive I would take is just the incredible people and stories I get to hear from around the world. I've just been in contact with, just people who survived the genocide in Rwanda, and just getting to share with them on a personal level, or this tiny Cambodian man who apparently led resistance armies against Pol Pot's regime when that was going down. You're just looking at this kind, humble man, you just never know. But these people have stories to share, and it's just always so humbling to hear where they've come from, and that makes me want to work harder on my end to be able to support and sustain them on their end. And it's always just a mutual giving and taking of encouragement. And then finally, some negatives. Kristen mentioned a little bit that nonprofit work isn't always lucrative, and that's one of the negatives of that work. But on the flip side, it is very fulfilling, at least for me. So it comes to the question of, are you just wanting to work to make money, or are you wanting to work to... Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't read your notes. Or are you wanting to work to be fulfilled? And sounds like what you're doing as well. It's very fulfilling. So one of the other negatives, people in my line of work tend to have a difficult time, including me at times, of separating work from life and being totally burned out on just the needs of the world are so great, and you're just one person. But if I don't do that, if I take a vacation, or if I don't work on this weekend, children will die and systems will fail and all these. And I think that's, first of all, that's not true, that you can't save the world. But it's always just this tension of, I feel a little bit guilty for not working as hard as I'm taking a break, so what could that time have been spent? But I think that's just not trusting the other people that you're working with. It's putting you more at the center of who's doing the changing versus God, who's doing the transformation. And so I think that that's a good lesson for just nonprofit workers in general, and anyone really in general, just recognizing who's the one doing the changing, and that you're not responsible for saving the world, that you have a small piece, but it's okay to care for yourself. So transition over to you.
Transition, yes. Well, the positives of my day job, as I like to call it, working with college students, are just the energy that I get to interact with every day. So you guys are college students, and basically some of the workers that you interact with, I would be in that role. So you get to do that on a day-to-day basis. And contrary to popular belief, if you like college, that doesn't mean they should go into higher education. It's a little bit more of investment into that. It's a lot of identity development work. It's a lot of, you don't give the answers, you ask a lot of questions. And it's really important to develop curriculum within the context of college students. Even from the time that we were in college till now, so much has changed in the world and with students and what you guys care about. And not to lump everybody together, because I don't believe in that, but coming up with curriculum for our office has involved with my life and my job. A positive aspect is really engaging with the local community of Azusa, really breaking down, we had the bubble here, there's a bubble there too. So the APU bubble, and getting outside of that, developing educational materials and all different kinds of things for our staff. So social justice, community engagement, and self-care, I get to do that in my day job with students on a day-to-day basis. And there's the daily stuff at any job of returning emails, having meetings, doing all that is really important too, and that's not even a negative. I work with a great team. So that's really something that I've learned in my role over the past 5 years is this isn't about hanging out with college students and just having fun. It's really about your guys and where you're at in your development, and really coming alongside and coaching you through to really build those building blocks while you're in college. And to have a little tiny piece of that, not that, I just get to sit there with students sometimes, and that's just a remarkable honor. It's really humbling to be able to be invested in students' lives in that way. The positives of writing and ministry work, which everything in my life kind of intersects, which is beautiful. It's also, like Nate was saying, it's definitely something of that line of work and home. Work does come home, and that's just the nature of our lives, but we do have a date night every week, and we're really good about keeping that, so that helps. But on a professional note, writing and ministry work, I said before, I wasn't an English major. So finding my way in that has actually been a positive, because I didn't really have expectations of the way I was supposed to write, or this way you do that, or I don't know, I don't know what it would be. I hope there's no English majors in the room. That is not very articulate at all. But I didn't study writing, and so once I started really making a formula of how to write a book, how to do this work, just kind of came up with my own system. I had no idea what I was doing. And it's not to undermine the writing industry, because I totally have so much respect for everything that they do and everything that's happening, but really what sells right now, as somebody put it lightly to me, unless you get kidnapped or you're running from office for an obscure state, then you will not get published. And so it's just something that was really hard of, I don't want to get kidnapped, I'm not running for office, and how do you get yourself out there in a way of like, I don't want to be this narcissistic, egotistical person, but I just really want to follow in what God has for me, and why is that so hard? So I'm kind of touching on both the positives and the negatives, because it was really negative for a while of, what the heck am I doing? How is this relevant? Why am I spending so much of my time and not getting paid for this? And it really came down to that it wasn't about money, and really in selling books, it's never been about how many books. That's been the thing that comes up, well, how many books do you sell? I'm like, I don't know. Just, here, I want one. It's really, and I don't want to undermine what I do either, and that's the other thing of being in a nonprofit. It's, I didn't have anything to do with it. I'm taking myself totally out of this. It was all God, and I'm kind of sitting there going, well, did I have a role in this at all? And I mean, that's really my spiritual director coming out of, you have a role in your own life, and learning how to play that role is really important. So finding out who I was in this whole journey has been the most positive part. Has been really the last 5 years, was also chronically ill through most of the last 5 years, and dealing with that. And so not only am I trying to write a book, keep a job, and get sick and go to all these different doctor's appointments, I mean, it was a huge, huge negative period in my life, of just trying to figure out, God, seriously, why am I doing all of this and working myself to death and using my husband's benefits because I don't have any? So the negative and all that really came out in the book, as interesting as that sounds. It was really the mess that I had to learn to sit in to find out the beauty in it, which hence the title, A Beautiful Mess. And now I see the beauty of the positive of the 3 roles working together. The third role that I didn't touch on is I was recently certified as a spiritual director. So those 3 roles of being a program coordinator, an author, and being a spiritual director has really come together in this really neat way of really, I get paid almost in a sense. I'm trying to figure out how to get paid to really just be who God created me to be, which sounds really weird, and I don't mean to say that in a prideful way at all, but getting to write and getting to meet with women and just giving people permission to be exactly where they are. If I could get a sustainable paycheck doing that, it would be amazing. But I think that I'm pretty close in terms of the way that we live and the way that we're doing our life is very, very different in terms of not looking at our worth as in paychecks. And the positive of that is that really we're developing this whole concept of home and what home means. And so our home has become work, and we're turning our whole home into this homestead. We have chickens, we have no grass. We paid the water bill for 2 months, and it was $100 of watering grass. Kind of seemed pointless to us that we didn't even use it, so we ripped it all out and planted vegetables. And it is something that our life has totally taken on this whole other way, and so it's hard to pinpoint the positives and the negatives for me, because a month ago the chickens got loose and ate a 2-month supply of lettuce, and I was like in tears, and I could talk about that negative.
Devastated.
But I mean, it's what's relevant is that I feel like there's positive and negative in anything, and it's the person of who you are and who you spend your time investing into that really matters in that. And so there are negatives. I mean, this economy sucks. Is it kosher to use that word? The publishing industry is not glamorous. It's really hard work. Higher education, every position is frozen. If you're looking for jobs, it's really hard. So I could spend time talking about all those negative things, but we're going to get to how to work all this out later. But those are all really hard, and I don't want to undermine the reality that the economy and this culture is in right now. But really learning the positive and the negative for me, the beauty and the mess of the 2 intermeshing together, because there's beauty and mess in every single thing that I've done, and really figuring out who I was in that was the huge positive about that, which isn't really tangible in a job, so, but that's the answer that I have, so.
I wasn't only in a lab, just looking at bacteria and cells, and was able to learn how to talk, how to write, how to interact with people and of different cultures and that sort of thing. That is the value of liberal arts education, because none of my jobs involve me looking at a test tube at any time. Like sometimes I might, because I'm the bacteria girl at the zoo, I know about the bacteria and I might have a random fact for them, but for the most part, when you're writing curriculum for, I don't know, second graders, they're not going to really care about that, that you know how many cells or things like that are in there. But being able to write those curriculums and knowing where a period goes and which is stuff I learned in college, believe it or not. And so I guess that's the benefit, is that I wasn't stuck in one area, that I was able to go anyway, because all of my jobs are in some sort of education region, and I was a biology major, so yeah.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it on the head. For me, liberal arts aspect of Westmont was just a broadening. I looked at all the majors when I first got in, and I just didn't like how, well, comp studies, okay, that's only that stuff, nothing about comp studies, I love it. Or biology, that's only the, and then I saw social science, I'm like, well, that has 4, like, that's very broad. So for me, the value of liberal arts is just, it allows you the opportunity to be broad if you want it to be. You don't have to be just in the lab. You get to learn about all these other aspects that at another institution you might just be, if you're in medicine, you're just in medicine. You don't have all these other aspects that can definitely relate and give you growth in several different areas. And I think it's just helped me to see the world as more interconnected and holistic, which to my current work, I mean, that paid off huge dividends, because you use the word holistic in World Vision. It's, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. It's just, that's kind of the buzzword at the time of just, it's a systems approach of development and their approach to poverty. And so it was invaluable having a liberal arts education, and I just took advantage of the off-campus studies programs and things where I'm not sure if I had been at another institution again, I'm not sure if I would have been able to go on those, just because there just seems to be more flexibility, and that you can fit different puzzle pieces in to make kind of what you want out of it. So.
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but just the value of liberal arts education and the holistic development of the person. That's why you're hopefully here, is that you saw something that was different from another institution. And I think it's really valuable, a Christian liberal arts education. And we have, well, I don't, but my students have to go to 3 chapels a week. But now I'm paying to hear the speakers that you guys get in chapel. And I know that I can't convince you, like, chapel's great, go. But even that aspect of looking at it like it's a class, of looking like you're going to learn things, and looking like you're going, did I just say that? I meant, going to class and treating it like that. I feel like the whole way a liberal arts institution is built upon is really about identity development. It's really about investing into you. And I can't say the same. I'm in higher ed, I'm at meetings with different colleges and all these kinds of things, and really the investment that's being put into you, the people who have been here. And Westmont's unique in the fact that once I'm looking at people, we've been saying hi to people in the hallways, and most everybody that we went to school with here that works here, they're still here. So it's really unique to have an institution that doesn't have turnover, that's really here and knows the value of you guys and wants to be here year in and year out to really invest in Westmont. And Westmont really is a school, and working with numerous schools, Westmont knows who they are. That doesn't mean that the students don't come in and change that and influence that, but I think coming to a school like Westmont, you're joining something that's so much bigger than you. And it's really beautiful once you graduate and you connect with when you hear Westmont, something just clicks. It's like, oh, you went to Westmont. And when you go to bigger schools, you went to this school? Oh, were you involved in this? Oh, okay. And you kind of go your separate ways. But at Westmont, there's something that's so unique about the liberal arts education here, is that people are really invested into you, and hopefully you're going to turn that around and want to invest that back. So I feel like that's a huge part of the liberal arts education.
Thank you. It is 4:30.
Okay.
If you need to leave, then you are welcome to do so. I would like to press ahead with just a couple more questions because it's so helpful to hear from you. One of my questions here is how you think about Christian vocation. Again, Kristen, that was a nice segue to talk about chapel, but do you, maybe you could address your idea of God's calling in your life, again, briefly, please.
I'll jump in really quick on this one and hopefully go faster. Where did I put that?
It's right there.
Right there, thank you. We talked a little bit about this in our lifestyle and the way we approach it, even with the economy. And I think even though Nate said it as a negative, the economy has really been something that we've pressed into in terms of, okay, we're not getting raises, we're not in these high rolling jobs, and so how do we think about our life differently? And money, I wish it was easier, I really do. But we don't live on a lot, and so we have made sacrifices that people look at sacrifices and we actually think as this is okay. So we have one car, Nate bikes to work.
No TV.
That wasn't a sacrifice, that was a furniture decision. But not to say we're not going to get a TV or anything like that, but really with the garden, with the yard, we've made these decisions about our life that we really do live to work. And so even in thinking about our vacations, where we go, when we go, the pattern of the sun matters in our home because our front yard doesn't get a lot of sun. And so as funny as it sounds for that to be such a huge part of our life, vocation for us is not just our 9-to-5 job. It's something that we come home to, that we're creating a home, that if we do have kids, they're going to be invested into this process too. Forgive us now, we'll pay for your therapy bills. But it's something that we're really interested in not having a whole swing towards technology and having that rule our lives, even though that's important and we're on Facebook, you can friend request us. But really wanting this to be about how we think about our whole life differently. And I don't know if the economy was great or if Westmont hadn't been part of our lives, if we would have thought the same way, because our life isn't just about our jobs. And even though the internships are great and your resumes are great, it's really about who you are outside of all of that and who you are in all of it. So in terms of vocation, I really believe in the Buechner quote of where the world's hunger meets and your deep passion is your vocation. And I feel like that's something that's really important, is if you're in a job that you hate and you hate going to work every single day, there's probably something in that like it's not your vocation. And your vocation is really so much of who you are. So if you're beating yourself up every single day and day in and day out, it's time to ask some big questions. There's a great documentary called something about lemonade, but it's about people who have lost their jobs in this whole recession and making lemonade out of lemons and how that's happened. And that's really happened for us when we're not getting raises, when we're not getting promotions, when these things haven't happened, when we have a mortgage to pay. How do we think about our whole life differently? And that's been the biggest blessing, and that's what the next book I'm writing is about. But our vocation is really our life and how we live into our life. I don't know if there's anything you want to add about the chickens, but...
No, we have 7 chickens. They're my best friends. No, we do have 7 chickens. And something you might not have touched on, vocation is larger than a job. It also includes for us our church community, which is hugely important. We changed churches about a year ago, and they're just part of our lives. We're all in the same neighborhood for the most part, and we're just stopping by. And like, to us, that's vocation. We took down our front yard had a fence, chain link, hideous fence, and other than the aesthetic value of ripping it out, which you're like, hooray. That's just opened up so many other conversations with people just walking by and, hey, why don't you have a fence? Or now we can grow vegetables and they like spill out close to the street and people, and we had pumpkins over the fall and little kids are, it's a pumpkin patch in their front yard. And it's just all these conversations that definitely would not have happened had we had a fence with a lawn that we're never out there. But now we're always out there gardening and things, and it's just inviting others kind of into our lives in that way. So,
And just to add one more thing, it intertwines with our jobs. So when people hear us, people bring Nate scraps at work for our chickens, and people are starting these conversations about thinking about their lives differently. And not to say that we want other people to do this because we don't. It's really just how crazy we are. And so we don't think that everybody should have one car. You know, it doesn't work for everybody. But in terms of the way we live our life, we have students over to our house. We have this life that's really, we have good boundaries, but at the same time, we want people to stop by and say hi. And so vocation for us is we don't have boundaries between the sacred and the secular. We really look at our life as everything is sacred. And I'm not going to put a label on something as secular because I really think that God lives and moves and works in everything. So it's really the way that we are trying to live our lives, and we don't have this figured out by any means. So, yeah.
and we still eat chicken. So it's not.
I'm still figuring it out, so.
That's fair. Hey, you haven't been out as long either. So let's just finish up by asking you if there is something that you would like to share with the rest of us, something that you haven't been able to say, perhaps about plans or anything.
It's okay not to have plans.
Good.
Yeah, like when last December 2009, I was like, I don't want to be pre-med anymore. After being pre-med for 4 years and want to be a doctor since I was 10. So, and had this whole like freak out of, I'm not pre-med, what the heck am I going to do? And like, I'm still like the one friend who's not in grad school who kind of doesn't really know what I'm going to do with my life. I kind of have an idea, but every time I get an idea, it gets blown up. But it's okay. Like I'm learning. It's okay not to have a plan. You don't have to be planned at every single step of your life because God tends to laugh at those. But
Yeah, going off of that, I would just say just be flexible. Just use any opportunity as learning. I wrote here, be in a state of continual learning, which, I mean, I could have used the massive fail of my probation officer experience to check myself into a cave and just wallow in my regret. And it was like, okay, that's done. I've put it behind me. And then the timing worked out where I got another job because I had the time to look for another job. So it was just this, my plan was to continue doing that. And I just, something in my spirit was, that's just not who you're supposed to be. And I had the flexibility and the forgiveness of myself to, it's okay, you can quit. And that just opened up where I am today 5 years later. So I would say be flexible.
I think those are great. And adding on to that, I would say if you don't have a mentor, find a mentor. Find somebody, and mentoring isn't about people coming to you, it's about you going to them and saying, I see something in you that I like, can we hang out? That's really it. And investing in somebody that can really be an investment into you is invaluable. Build your resume. I'm looking at Dave King, and he had, my first job at Westmont was under him. And just having experiences here that really you can put on your resumes and do those kinds of things. And that can be a mentorship, that can be your first job. And really, just to piggy, life is not a plan, and I wish somebody would have told that to me. And life is not a checklist. Do not build your life on a checklist. I promise you'll be happier. Really look at your life like it's a journey, and use your 20s to really save yourself, because it's not your job to save the world. So that's what I would end on. So.
Wonderful advice. Let's give our panelists a hand. There are blue forms. Hopefully you all have one. I would really appreciate your filling out an evaluation form so we can keep making this better. Our panelists have agreed to stick around, and if you'd like to speak to them or ask questions. And happily, we have some of Kristen's books on the back table, and she is happy to have you stop by and thumb through, take a look. So please do that. And again, thank you very much for attending. Thank you so much, panelists. You did an awesome job.
Thanks. Thank you.